This is a Year 8 English video on Chapter 14 of the novel, Once. Let's take a look at the beginning of the chapter. Once I loved stories and now I hate them. This is directly related to what's happened before. Just at the end of Chapter 13, Felix is realising that his parents are passed away. The news is fresh to him. He's finally accepted that his parents are dead. And he's mourning. This whole reaction is him mourning his parents are dead. He's angry and hurt and he lashes out. I hate stories about God, Jesus, Mary and that crowd and how they're meant to be taking care of us. He's angry at God. I hate stories about the beautiful countryside with much food and easy work. These are the stories that are luring Jews into the death camps. And I hate stories about parents who'll say they'll come back for their children and never do. This is obviously his experience. So the setting of the scene at the beginning of this chapter is of Felix in great pain over realising that his parents are dead. On page 122 we can see that Zelda is ill. She has a fever, she's deathly ill, and Barney's worried about her. It says here, I can't leave Zelda like this, says Barney, dipping the rag into the bucket of water and pressing it gently to her face, but she needs aspirin. If we can't get her temperature down in the next few minutes, really clearly she has a life-threatening fever. She needs aspirin to bring the temperature down. I don't like you going out alone, says Barney. So Barney is in a situation where he's forced to send Felix out at night into the ghetto by himself. So we have the setting in the cellar, but then we move on and Felix goes into the ghetto. And we need to outline on page 124, the ghetto streets are different tonight. They're just as dark and scary and full of litter as always, but not so deserted. Nazi trucks are zooming around, German soldiers are running in and out of apartment blocks. In the distance I can hear shooting. So things are changing in the ghetto. This is a direct consequence of Operation Reinhardt. Operation Reinhardt, which is the Nazi final solution for the Jewish people. The extermination of German Jews and Polish Jews. Jews on the continent of Europe. This is the final solution, the extermination. It was named Operation Reinhardt in Poland and it swung into operation in 1942. Ghetto, just to remind us, is a segregation. So part of the city, let's say this was in Warsaw, part of Warsaw is walled off and only Jews lived in that area. The Jewish people were segregated from the rest of the constituents of the city and put into their own ghetto. Felix walks out into the streets of the ghetto, and this is where the setting of chapter 14 takes place. Okay, now we're going to look at the characters in chapter 12, and this focuses on Felix. Right from the beginning on page 121, we can see that he's grieving for the loss of his parents. We've spoken about this before. We can see that when Zelda shows kindness to him, are your parents dead too, she asked, and she puts her silver chain with a little heart on it round his neck. This is to make you feel better, but he says, I don't want to feel better. I don't want to feel anything at all. But this changes pretty quickly when Zelda falls sick. All of a sudden, Felix is a man with a mission. I must find her some aspirin, and there's something else I must bring back for her as well. We can also see on page 123 how much this horrific instance with the toddler in the high chair being shot in the kitchen in the last chapter has really affected Felix. I try not to think of what's in the kitchen of that apartment, he says on page 123. This is further backed up later on when he says, I close my eyes as I step into the kitchen. I hope I open them slowly. After last night, I won't ever be able to go into a kitchen with my eyes open again. On page 126, we see that he finds the book Just William by Rick Malcrompton. It's his favourite book in the whole world and probably one of Dodie's by now. So we remember that he gave Dodie his most precious book as a gift. Now he's taking the opportunity to find one, but it certainly shows the kindness that he displays. On page 129, we see he finds out that Zelda's father, inside the locket Zelda gave him, is wearing a Nazi uniform. He gets quite conflicted about this. You notice that he thanks God, Jesus, Mary, the Pope and Rick Malcrompton, replacing Adolf Hitler, for finding where he is. But let's deal with this profound issue here. This is probably the most disappointing part of the novel because he doesn't deal with this issue very well. If Zelda's father is a Nazi, what does that make Zelda? If Zelda's dad is a Nazi, does she deserve carrot soup and aspirin, he says. That's a really interesting question. If a father is a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, then should he be kind to her? Not very far away from where he first raises the question, Felix concludes she can't help what her father did. He doesn't wrestle with this question very much, just a very short part. Unlike other issues in the book, which are much weightier. Where is God in the Holocaust? What about his parents? Are they dead or are they not? Can you face reality? Can you face the truth? Is it possible to face the realities of life and be relatively unaffected? All of these are big questions that he has. This one is a big question too. If Zelda's dad wears a Nazi uniform, where he concludes very quickly that she can't help what her father did, and the question is then laid to rest. So this issue, which I think is a really important issue, doesn't get much of a hearing in this book. I've not given my personal opinion before, but this aspect of the book disappoints me a little.